Michael Carter's feet barely touched the ground as he burst through the glass door of the convenience store on Maple Ridge Road, his right hand clenched so tightly around the lottery ticket that the paper creased and wrinkled under the pressure of his grip. He stood under the amber glow of the parking lot light, chest-heaving eyes scanning the numbers one more time, because once was not enough. Not when those numbers said what they said. Not when the screen behind the cashier had flashed $80 million in bold red digital letters and the machine's verification beep had rung out like a church bell at sunrise. $80 million. The words didn't even feel real in his mouth. They felt like something borrowed from someone else's life, someone luckier, someone the universe had decided to smile at. Michael Carter had never been that man. He had been the man who worked in crawlspaces in July heat and crawled under houses in January cold. He had been the man who sat in his truck eating gas station sandwiches because there was no time for a real lunch. He had been the man whose name didn't appear on charitable donor lists or country club rosters or any surface where success was publicly recorded because his success had always been the invisible kind, the kind that lives in a child, fed a bill, paid a promise kept. But tonight was different. Tonight, every single sacrifice he had made in the last 12 years had a reason behind it, even if the reason had arrived in the unlikely form of a crumpled paper ticket purchased with the change left over from a gas station coffee. He drove home, imagining Liam's face. He drove home, imagining a house with a real roof that didn't leak when the November rains came through. He drove home smiling in a way he hadn't smiled since before the world fell apart. And then he opened his front door. The air inside the house felt different. Not wrong exactly, just shifted the way a room feels when someone else has been breathing in it for a while before you arrived, when there is a presence in a space that hasn't cleared yet. He almost missed it. His hand was still on the doorframe, his jacket still half on when his eyes dropped to the floor. A pair of heels, black, high, placed neatly beside the mat the way a person who believed they belonged in a space would leave them not kicked off in a rush, but arranged deliberate a statement of permanence. Michael's smile faded. He knew those shoes. He had bought them as a birthday gift 11 years ago, standing in a department store in November trying to guess the right size, the salesperson watching him with patient kindness while he calculated whether the purchase fit within what remained in his checking account that week. He had wrapped them himself clumsily with tape that pulled up the corners of the paper. He had never seen them again after she left. His heart did something strange and slow as he looked up, and there she was, sitting on his couch in his living room, in the house he had scraped together every penny to keep legs crossed, hands folded in her lap, with the particular composure of someone who had rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. Emily Carter looked at him the way a person looks at a problem they have already solved, the way a chess player looks at a board where the endgame is already clear in their mind, even if the other player hasn't seen it yet. She didn't blink. She didn't apologize. She didn't even offer a hello. She said, "We need to discuss my half." If you have ever watched someone step back into a life, they abandoned the moment things got hard just because the money finally showed up, then stay right here. Because what happened next in that living room and in the months that followed will leave you breathless. The lottery ticket was crumpled in Michael's fist as he stood in the doorway, unable to make his legs carry him forward. He had checked the numbers 3 times in the store, then twice more in his truck, while the engine idled in the parking lot. He had even called the lottery commission's automated line feeding in the digits one by one. And when the recorded voice confirmed the jackpot, he had let out a sound that was half laugh and half sob. The sound of a man who had been holding his breath for over a decade and finally felt it safe to exhale. He had sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just breathing, just feeling. The plans had come in quiet waves, arriving not as a roar, but as a succession of simple, clear images that replaced one another with the gentle certainty of pages turning. Not the wild fantasies people imagine when they think about winning no yacht, no private jet, no penthouse overlooking a skyline. Michael Carter's dreams had always been smaller than that, and somehow more heartbreaking for it. He thought about Liam's college fund, the one that existed only as a folder on his laptop with a sad spreadsheet inside. A spreadsheet he updated carefully every few months with whatever small additional contribution he had managed to scrape together that quarter. He thought about the back pain he had been ignoring for 2 years because a specialist cost money he didn't have, and the clinic he could afford had a 6-month waiting list. He thought about a house, just a real house, where the windows sealed properly, and the furnace didn't rattle through the night like something was dying inside it, and where Liam could have his own room that didn't share a wall with the bathroom pipes. He had driven home grinning, and now the grin was gone, replaced by something colder and more complicated. He stared at Emily across the threshold of the home he had built without her, and in the silence between them, 12 years of absence pressed against the walls of that small living room like a held breath. Michael Carter had been awake since 5 in the morning on the day everything changed, which was not unusual. He was almost always awake before 5. The body learns its rhythms and refuses to let go of them, and for Michael, there was always a reason to rise. A service call scheduled for 6:30 in the Westbrook subdivision, a family whose central air had gone out overnight. He had loaded his van in the dark, the metal tools cold against his palms. His back had started complaining before he left the driveway, that low, deep ache that lived just to the right of his spine and flared whenever he bent at an awkward angle, which was basically every hour of a workday in his profession. He swallowed 2 ibuprofen with reheated coffee and drove. The Carter family lived in a 2-bedroom house on the east side of Cloverfield. Not the best part of town, not the worst, but a neighborhood honest about what it was. The gutters needed cleaning. The driveway had a crack that had been widening for 3 years. The kitchen faucet dripped in a slow rhythm Michael had learned to tune out. He rented from a landlord who was not unkind but not responsive, and the monthly payment consumed a fraction of his income that he tried not to think about too precisely. Between the HVAC job and weekend shifts at a hardware warehouse, Michael brought in enough to cover rent, utilities, groceries, and Liam's school expenses, with something small left over, small enough that he had learned to feel grateful for it rather than bitter, though there were nights when the bitterness came anyway, quiet and uninvited.